Welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. If you do like the programming and what you see here, hit the like button and be sure and subscribe. I know a lot of these musicians are not household names, and but back in the day, perhaps they didn't get their due and maybe a little unheralded in their work. Many of these artists are still performing and recording today, like my guest we're getting ready to speak with. Hopefully, with these interviews, we'll hook up with some old fans and find some new fans along the way. Well, Glenn Cardier is an Australian singer songwriter who began as an art teacher but was soon bitten by the music bug. After being spotted on a TV songwriting competition, he was signed to Festival Records. Glenn recorded 2 albums in Sydney in the early 70s. He then relocated to England in 1974, recorded an album, and played folk clubs across the country for 4 years. During the 80s and after a return to Australia, Glenn would tour with old friend Spike Milligan and front the band Bel-Aires on the pub circuit. Over his career, Glenn has opened for artists like Harry Chapin, Frank Zappa, Cheech and Chong, and Manfred Mann's Earth Band. After a 25-year hiatus, Mr. Cardier returned to music in 2002 and has not looked back. Beginning with Rattle the Cage in 2002, my guest has released 5 more albums, with 2019's Wild at Heart being his latest. In 2009, Glenn formed his own band, the Sideshow, with a live show released on DVD and a highly acclaimed album, 2012's Stranger Than Fiction. Well, welcome, Glenn.
My pleasure, Greg.
Thank you for being here and taking time out to visit. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Brisbane, Queensland. Brisbane, as they said in those days, an overgrown country town. I think it's changed a little since then. I recently visited Brisbane, and I was keen to revisit the old haunts, but the old haunts seem to have been bulldozed and replaced with new haunts.
I wonder if there's a few, like a guy I talked to earlier, used car lots.
Yeah.
Well, do you have fond childhood memories, like as in hearing music in the household when you were little?
Yeah, we had, I'm not sure what they had in the States, but we had these giant radios, consoles, with walnut veneer consoles in the living room, with a whole bunch of valves in the back and a tiny speaker. And my father used to call it the wireless. We called it the wireless.
Right.
Back in the day. And that music still resonates. That's music of the 50s for me.
Yeah.
And in Brisbane at the time, Elvis hit like a hurricane, and all that other music that came out at that time. There's Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly, all the guys, Eddie Cochran. That still resonates. Whenever I hear those tracks, it doesn't take me back to that time, but the music is just like as fresh as I'd heard it in those days.
Right. It is. It's timeless. A lot of that music, it really is. And it hits you wherever you are, whether you're younger or older,
Yeah.
or whatever decade you're in. It is. Well, timeless. Were either one of your parents musically inclined at all?
No, not at all. I mean, we struggled financially. I mean, it was the times were kind of tough in Brisbane. If they'd have had the opportunity, I think maybe that might have happened.
Right.
With my father particularly, who could hold a tune. But there was some reticence of the people from Brisbane in accepting these rock and roll upstarts. So there was an element of rebellion there, but also an element of if I could play the guitar and tame that beast, that I might find some acceptance as well. So guitars really caught my eye. Seeing Ricky Nelson and James Burton sitting on the bed playing a Chet Atkins song, and just the aura of the guitar and the white binding, that still resonates as well.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking, so that was your first instrument you picked up, was a guitar?
It was the one that grabbed me the most. Did you ever have Meccano sets in the States, where you construct things with screws, and it was like a precursor to I guess Lego, except it was metal.
Metal, that rings a bell. It might have been called something else here, but that does ring.
Well, I used to make guitars out of that, and
okay.
A fake guitar and hang it around my neck. I mean, these days they wouldn't be able to release that Meccano because the screws were just about chokeable size for young kids, But I had a set, and it was the image of the rockabilly guy, or the country guy that sort of caught my eye. And later on, I discovered the blues guys with their style of playing. We also had a publication in Australia called a Songster. It was a tiny songbook, and I guess the publishers of all the great songs got together and said, well, we could sell the lyrics to the public this way. And every second page had a photograph, and I remember there was a picture of Chuck Berry on one. It was a boomerang songster. And the lyrics for School Days would be on one side and a picture of Chuck on the other. And I sang those over and over, and I think that's where my love of lyrics in songs came from.
Okay, all right, yeah. Were you infatuated when you were a kid with cowboys? And did you get your cap guns and dress up like cowboy and
had the cap? Yeah, I had two cap guns. I had
two.
The double 6 shooters on either side.
Nobody was going to mess with you.
I think that's right.
I think kids all over grew up with that. It was, the Wild West, the men wearing the white hats and all that kind of stuff. Just crazy.
I could spin them, and you practice spinning them and dropping them back into the holster.
Oh yeah.
We didn't have TV for a long time. And it was a revelation when TV came along. It was just black and white TV for us for a long time in Brisbane, and so there was the westerns were very popular with Wide Open, Rifleman.
Right. We watched the Lone Ranger here.
Lone Ranger, Cisco Kid, all that sort of stuff. And I'm kind of, when you read biographies of other guitar players like Keith Richard, and I'm just reading Bernie Taupin's book. It had an effect on them too. I mean, they were in the UK, and still there was this romance of the guy on the horse with the gun and the freedom and the right and wrongs. And I when I toured Scotland, there was a whole bunch of Scots up there speaking unintelligibly in their wonderful Scottish accent, wearing Stetson hats and boots. It's amazing.
You just touched on that. That is the one English-speaking country that is hard to decipher. it's the hardest one for. It's the hard. They have the strongest accent. You know.
I do. I have Scottish friends here, and I'm getting better at it. And but I've found that their sense of humor in Glasgow, particularly, aligned with my particular Australian sense of humor. So I loved touring up there. It was lovely.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and one side of my family, my dad's is Scottish, so I have a certain kinship. I think it is going back with these guys, and I've interviewed quite a few Scottish. And as long as they talk slow,
That's it.
yeah, I can understand. But anyway, yeah, going back to the cowboy references too, you know, I think that's why they call really good guitar players gunslingers. You know, I mean, it's that kind of analogy.
I think it is, and even the pose is
Yeah.
I mean, if you could get a horse on stage, I think it'd be
right. That's good. Well. How about? Can you recall one of the first singles or albums that you bought yourself?
It'd have to be the Shadows.
Okay.
I remember the orange label. You were aware of the Shadows?
Yes.
Cliff Richard's band.
Oh yeah.
Hank B. Marvin.
Hank Marvin. Yeah.
Yeah. He tells the tale that he heard James Burton, who we just mentioned before with Ricky Nelson.
Yeah.
Heard James Burton on the Ricky Nelson records and was trying to work out how Burton could do all those bends on his guitar, all the string bends.
Yes.
And they figured that it had to be probably a whammy bar, and they imported a Fender Stratocaster to the UK, and Hank developed that bending whammy bar style, which is unique to him. After that, Hank realized that Burton used to put light gauge strings on, and he could bend the strings easily. Hank had these railroad tracks of strings,
yeah,
and he couldn't bend them at all, So I formed a band that played Shadows instrumentals, or I don't know if I formed it, but we were a bunch of kids, and I had the guitar. And I had the good fortune to be short-sighted and wearing glasses like Hank Marvin. So I became lead guitarist because I couldn't see.
Because you couldn't see wearing glasses. That's good. I like that. Give him lead guitar. Well, was that your very first band?
Yeah, we're called the Profiles, which is
okay.
After the Shadows, and then times changed quickly. The Beatles came along, and the Who, and so we morphed from the Profiles into the New Generation.
Okay.
Talking about my new generation.
Yeah.
So those were heady days in Brisbane. I used to ride my bike to rehearsal. The amp was big enough to fit in the basket on the front of the bicycle there, and I used to lay the guitar across the handlebars, and pedal for miles, and we'd play those songs, and it's a great feeling when you're getting that. It's kind of a powerful feeling when that guitar goes through that amp. And the sound heads on out into the audience. Yeah,
comes out like that, exactly. So we're talking about what year right now? Would you say?
This is pre-60s. It's got to be around 62, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe earlier. The change from the 50s to the 60s. I think I had the electric guitar in the 60s. Acoustic guitar in the 50s, listening to Kingston Trio and
the harmony
music.
Oh yeah, I've had that in a couple of interviews. They've quoted Kingston Trio. Well, how about in the mid 60s? Was there any kind of music scene developing around you?
Bands were springing up everywhere in Brisbane. there were they used to have dances, and they were on the advertisement for the local dances on Saturday night. It used to be in a church hall or something like that. They'd have 50-50, and it'd be 50% old time music and 50% rock, this new nasty rock and roll music.
Nasty.
And that was to appease everybody,
yeah,
and try and get as many people in as you could. So,
oh yeah.
but there'd been 70-30. It was an interesting time. There were not too many, because these gigs were run by clubs, Lions clubs or something in the area. Then that you had to have an element of old time music as well back in the day.
You had to appease that older crowd, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how about prior to your solo started going? Were you in any other bands, or did you just start going playing solo?
Yeah. As when I hit high school, we formed a band called the Revolution. And this was in 1965, because we were besotted with Cream, Jimi Hendrix, and so I was playing, Sunshine of Your Love, and learning the guitar solos that Eric Clapton would play, and we entered in a song competition here called the Hoadley's Battle of the Sounds, and it was that era of Peace, Love, Dove, and wild slideshows on the wall behind us and that kind of thing, so that was that era. Brisbane had morphed into a blues-based enclave. There were underground coffee places in just off Queen Street, and for some reason, blues or beat groups, electric blues, had taken hold in Brisbane at that time, and many bands from Brisbane benefited from that scene. That sort of the musicians had moved through that sort of blues-based scene. And bands like the Saints, I think, benefited from the fact that Brisbane, being this conservative town upstairs, had this blue stuff going on downstairs.
Downstairs. Yeah, well. You mentioned Kingston Trio a little bit ago. When did you start getting more into the folk scene, folk music?
Yeah. I guess there was a folk club. I think it's to do with writing songs. I was always fascinated. I wrote instrumental songs for the earlier bands, twangy guitar songs, and I bought a new acoustic guitar, and I'd learned to fingerpick, and that kind of interested me. There was one folk club in Brisbane. And I'd started writing these songs, some with a humorous bent, others a kind of folky in nature. I'm trying to think of what style they might be, but there would be the Kingston Trio style of artist. And I started to perform you'd perform at parties and that kind of stuff. And there was something in writing a song and presenting a unique song that appealed to me a lot. And I think that they were my formative years. And if anything, being a songwriter is my number one aim. I wouldn't care if I never played live again. If I can write a song,
you could write.
I'd feel okay. But you write a song so people will listen. So it's hand in glove, one thing.
Yes, it does.
On another.
They go together. All right, well, let's cross off that question. I was going to ask you that later on, which you prefer, live or songwriting.
Well,
I mean,
I think you need both, because you mentioned before that I took 25 years off, and to all you young songwriters out there, I recommend you probably shouldn't do that. That's probably it'll probably stall your career a little bit. And but a friend of mine used to run an open mic night in Sydney, and he kept pestering me, saying, what are you doing? You should come and play. And one night I thought, I'm going to do that. Took a guitar, dragged the guitar out from under the bed that'd been there for a long time, restrung it, played some of the old songs, thinking that everybody would automatically recognize those songs from 25 years ago. And of course, that didn't happen. And but on the way home, in my mind, I started writing another one, because I think you need those. I think Jimmy Vaughan once said, you need a guitar and a good pair of boots, and you're away, And so I just started writing again, and that's when Rattle the Cage came out. I wrote all those songs for Rattle the Cage after that time when I decided to start playing again.
Okay. We'll get up to that in a bit, but I want to ask you, early on, did you do any busking?
No, I've never busked. No, okay. I'm not I can be an aggressive player and a loud player. The gigs that stick with me the most are the ones that can be whisper quiet all the way up to singing pretty full on, and playing very delicately. And I think I just don't have the repertoire to stand out there and busk for more than maybe a couple of songs. Okay.
No, that didn't happen.
Maybe I should give it a go, and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
It might be a new phase.
It might be a new phase. Oh, that's fun. That's funny. Yeah, it's never too late, like they say. It's never too late.
Never too late. Christmas is coming up.
Right.
I got the hat. I can.
All right.
Get it out.
Well, that brings up my next question. Where did the bowler hat? You mentioned the eyeglasses earlier, but the bowler hat and the spectacles. Where did that start?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. I don't know. I had a bunch of songs that created a mood. I wanted a character on stage that was kind of Chaplin-esque.
Okay, gotcha.
I think that was my thinking at the time. I mean, I didn't wear it around all the time. It was just on stage, and it set up a mood that I think I was very comfortable with the sort of songs that I was writing, which were kind of happy, sad songs. I mean, they were kind of dark, but then there were lines in them that where the audience would laugh at, And then after a while, I started enjoying that so much that I could switch it so that they would laugh in the next line, depending on how I could deliver that. So I guess I was an actor in some ways, or character. I was a character.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess you can hide behind that too, because I'm a bit reticent about the whole stage thing. Right. So I think that was. I don't think it was a conscious effort. I think I just rolled into it,
Okay. Well, how long had you been playing live before you were approached for the record deal? How long had you been playing?
Yeah. I was performing at the folk clubs in Brisbane. There wasn't much else. That the band, the Revolution, had folded, I think we had to do exams or something.
School got in the way.
For us, I know that killed off the career, the blues career. There was a talent show on TV called New Faces.
Okay.
And I can't remember how I even applied. I think I must have recorded or wrote a letter to them or something like that. And I think I won that particular round with a song called Oysters. I wouldn't write a song called Oysters these days. I wouldn't know what to say, but apparently I thought it was a good idea back then to go on national television singing a song called Oysters, and but I did okay. And Channel 9 were in cahoots with a show called Bandstand, I guess based on your Bandstand.
Oh, okay.
In Sydney. And winners of New Faces could appear on Bandstand. And so they were running a song competition in Sydney, flew me down there. I can't remember what song I performed. I think it was a song called Every Wounded Bird. Festival Records were in the audience. And they offered me a contract, which I didn't read and signed straight away. The classic tale.
Right. Was that surprising to you? Were you kind of like taken aback that somebody would offer you?
Well, yeah, it's kind of exciting because writing and singing was then my thing. I mean, I wasn't a footballer. I didn't do any of that other stuff, but I could hold a tune and I could play the guitar a little bit, and they were my songs.
Okay, and that was Festival, and they offered you what, a 2-record deal? Was that what it was?
Yeah, there were two publishing companies vying for my signature, and I think on the first record they just split 50-50 because there was they did a deal with each other to get this artist out, but I wound up with Festival Records, and the Festival had a good studio, great mics, a really nice producer, and I was the quirky, folky guy who came in, and I guess it was in the era of great session musicians. So we had string players, and all the great players in Sydney would play on this record. Later on, those guys are out of work because you could emulate those guys with synthesizers, etc. But back in the day, I would write the song, record it with guitar, and then an arranger would come in and do all the write the music out for the arrangement for that song, and that's what happened there.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same story everywhere at that time. Yeah, other countries here in UK. Well, was the recording of Days of Wilderness, was that the first time you'd been in a studio?
First time I've been in a major studio. There were a couple of small places that could cut you an acetate in Brisbane. And it was 4-track. La the Beatles, 4-track in the beginning, and then halfway through, by the time the next album, Only When I Laugh, came along, I think Richard Batchins had gone to the States and looked at a Neve console, and then we were multi-track after that in Australia.
Okay. Were both the first 2 albums recorded in the same studio?
Yeah. Okay. Festival at Piermont. I think there used to be a stairway with all the artists painted on the wall or something like that, and it was I'm hoping it's heritage listed and they haven't torn it down, but I got a feeling it's gone. But Festival used to have a pressing plant underneath as well. I mean, it was an extraordinary record company back in the day. It was Australia's record company.
Okay.
And
okay.
Yeah.
Well, was it a fairly pleasant experience recording those first couple albums?
It was nerve-wracking because I really didn't know what I was doing, and you're a writer. You got your head in the clouds. There's a couple of really interesting songs there that I'm not sure how the songs emanated. Sometimes I'm a very instinctive songwriter. You know, I'll get a fragment of a phrase or a fragment of a melody, and I'll just follow that rather than say, oh, this is a song about trains or the weather. I'll just follow those lyrics. So it's a kind of a organic, poetic way of creating music. And that was de rigueur at that time. And so it's very much of its time. But I graduated to performing live, and I would be in Sydney. There were lots of folk clubs springing up in Sydney. Yeah. And I quickly learned that these heartfelt little folky songs kind of, you know, they were well-meaning and earnest, but they kind of didn't cut it with a live audience. And that other Glenn Cardier, the other side of me, the anti-hero guy in the bowler hat with the dark sense of humor, started to emerge, and he was much more popular than the other guy.
yeah, that's things. Yeah, that's been said about you. You know, the not oxymoron, but kind of the opposite of, you know, performing live, your persona versus your recorded material. Yeah. So
yeah, there was a mismatch there, and the guy on the record the festival wanted me to be was different to the guy who was going around and you know, playing gigs at universities and that kind of stuff, you know, and almost anti-establishment, I guess.
Right. Well, why the move to England in '74?
Gough Whitlam was our prime minister, he was hot for the arts, and there was an Australian scholarship grants. There were grants given out to artists. If you applied well enough and wrote a good enough resume, you might score those grants. And so I was lucky enough to be given a travel grant to travel to the UK. I made the point that I could probably learn more from the English folk club scene at that time, and bring that back to Australia. And I guess that they bought that, and so I headed for the UK with my family, my young family, my wife and my new baby daughter Beth, in 1974. Festival had connections with Festival International, and Peter Gormley ran that. Peter was the manager of Cliff Richard and the Shadows, which, you know, was kind of a serendipitous thing to happen. And Olivia Newton-John.
Oh, right.
And Labby Siffrey. Yeah.
Oh, Labby Siffrey. Yeah, we'll get to him. Yeah, you wrote a song that Olivia Newton-John recorded as well.
I did. Yeah. She actually recorded four
of them. Okay.
And I'm not sure where the other three are. They're probably around somewhere. But Newborn Babe, which is a song I wrote, you know, after Beth was born, and that was on one of the album I recorded with Labby Siffrey producing me in England.
Okay.
Peter Gormley probably had a word to John Farrar, who was producing Olivia's record at Abbey Road. And John obviously liked Newborn Babe, did a fantastic job. I mean, Olivia sings. I mean, it was only a short song because I was into Randy Newman at that stage, who wrote songs that were a minute and a half long.
Yeah, it's like,
And I was sort of saying, Glenn, you couldn't add a verse or something.
Right, one more verse.
They invited me down to Abbey Road to hear the recording of the backing track. I think Olivia wasn't there at the time. I think she was filming Grease.
She was, yeah. I believe she was in that, yeah, over here.
Yeah, I think she was over. Yeah, that's right. And so if you go to Abbey Road, of course, you have to walk across the crossing.
Yeah, you do.
That's just something you got to do. So I did that.
Mandatory. That's yeah.
And that was a thrill, because John Farrow's his arrangements were just glorious. I know she recorded one other song called "Somebody's Under My Bed," which was one of my funny songs about somebody who was like paranoid that there was somebody's going to grab his foot if he got out of bed, But that didn't see the light of day. I think they made the wise decision that wouldn't be the best career move for her. So
that wasn't the best.
But she sung that song live a few times, and it was a great thrill for me.
I was trying to think, but it's Marvin Welch and John Farrar and one other guy got together and they recorded an album. Oh, Welch, Farrar.
Welch, Marvin Farrar.
There you go. Right. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Marvin. Yeah, Hank Marvin.
Yeah, because Bruce Welch was in the Shadows too.
That's right. Yes, that was it. It's a nice album too. It's I've got that on CD. Really nice. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, they're very, very talented guys, and meeting Hank. I mean, I did tell him the story that I got into music because I was short-sighted like he was, but I don't think he saw the joke in that. Yeah. But I got to meet him. You meet. They say don't meet your heroes, but it was delightful to me.
Yeah, I've heard that. A lot of musicians on here that I talked to, I wouldn't say heroes, but I've admired them for a long time, and most of them have turned out to be really, really good people, really nice.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's worked out. But I know what you're saying about that, because there've been a couple that should have just left them on the shelf. Worship from afar.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Well, you once you got to England, you fell in and were befriended by the local folkies. Did you know right where to go? Did you know right to with Sandy and Dave and?
Yeah. In the local music papers over there, they'd put ads for musicians. I mean, Elton John and Bernie Taupin were just answered ads. Yeah. And on every corner is a pub, a little thatched pub, and you'd be walking along a dark, dingy street, and it'd be raining and terrible, and you'd walk inside, and everybody's happy, and there's a fire going, and there's folk music playing. It was quite a scene, and I was aware that Paul Simon had done that many years previously. He'd done the folk circuit in the UK. And I think he came back with a whole bunch of licks that that he might have been influenced by with his guitar playing. And so I used to turn up, and they'd have like an open mic night. They'd put somebody on before the main act, not pay them anything, and if you're any good, they might invite you back for an evening during the week or something like that. And I started to pick up gigs that way.
Okay.
And bought a couple of pretty good guitars over there that could really push out the sound, because a lot of those folk clubs didn't have PAs.
Okay.
And I'm quite a delicate sort of. I rely on the lyrics and delicate picking, but back then, it was a raucous time at a folk club, and you had to. The audience was funnier than you are, and so you have to really, really. I learned a lot, and I brought that back to Australia as part of my stage act as well.
Okay, you just answered my next question about how that period in your life really shaped you. Yeah, it really shaped you.
I'm way ahead of you, Greg.
You are. You're a mind reader. You are ahead of me. Stream of conscious. Yeah. So that was a good time. Was it at that time, or was it earlier where the folk scene was kind of communal? It was like a communal living and that kind of thing. I don't know if this is a little later, or if it was.
I think that was later. I mean,
okay.
They humorously call it the Great Folk Scare. It was. I don't think it lasted that long. It kind of morphed into other stuff. But I mean, Dylan always refers to folk music as being, that sort of important part of his writing. I mean, he falls back on the early folk songs and their structure and the way it's put together. And for a while there, the folk scene was burning very brightly. And Fairport Convention in England were they started the electric folk approach to things, rather than their finger on your ear and singing the 82 verses of a murder ballad. They had other music, and they were very creative with that, with Sandy Denny and Rick Thompson and Dave Pegg. And I can't remember how I met Dave Pegg, who plays bass for Fairport. But I did a gig I supported Fairport at a gig, and I remember I had a song about an electric chair called Old Sparky, which I don't know where that is now. It just came to me. We got on okay, and then I met Trevor, and Trevor said, "Well, who's producing your next record? After Labby's production, who's doing the next one?" And I said, "I don't have anybody." So, well, let's put something together. And so I spent some time with Trevor and Sandy, and then Dave came on board, and I visited Dave at his place, and we recorded a bunch of demos, and he added the overdubs himself. I think Dave Swarbrick played fiddle.
Dave, yeah.
And Dave Pegg recorded one of my songs called Dance Numbers.
Yes,
on that album. And I think Fairport often played Dance Numbers from time to time.
Right. I think as a closer, they would play that.
As a closer, yeah. It's one of those songs. Yeah, it's about a guy's just walking down the street minding his own business, and then the music starts playing as it would in a Hollywood musical, and all the winos and the police start dancing,
Yeah.
And he's a little confused at that.
Who wouldn't be? Yeah. Well, I just talked to, I don't know if you'll know this name, Andy Roberts, who played with Ian Matthews, who was originally in Fairport. Yeah. In Plainsong, in the band Plainsong. I just talked to him earlier today. So it's interesting. The more of these that I do, the connections that I find doing these.
You could keep rolling on with any player who'd ever played in Fairport could keep you going for a number of years.
Right. That's right. Very true. That's very well. How did Labby Sifri come to produce your '76 album? How did that
Yeah,
come about?
he just wanted to do it. I mean, he'd heard my demos, and I I guess he was touring at the time. He was quite a popular artist at the time.
Yeah.
Of course, it must be love, must be Labby's pension, I would imagine.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a
It's
long
a big song, right?
Yes.
And a lovely guy.
Yeah.
And we recorded at a studio called the Wembley Pool, the Empire Pool at Wembley. And Dick Plant was the engineer. And Dick had recorded with Roy Wood from Wizard.
Yeah, the Move and Wizard, yeah.
And the Move. And we needed brass on a couple of tracks, and so we got the brass guys from Wizard, and Roy popped in and immediately told us that we were doing it all wrong and showed us how to do it right. You know? And,
did he?
And it was he is a hero of mine. I mean,
yeah,
there's another hero. Yeah,
right.
And that was a lovely experience too. I have no terrible experience stories about my heroes, so
well, that's
we can talk about them all freely here.
freely here. Well, yeah, I've been a fan of Labby's material for some time. He's penned some great songs. Well, how was it working with him? Was that the first time he had produced anyone? Do you know?
I think it might have been. He might have produced some of his own stuff. Yeah, it was good. He chose the musicians, and he felt that to bring us all back down to earth, that we should have some musicians that were sympathetic to that folk style of music, or the Americana sort of music. He asked Chaz and Dave to play on most of the tracks. Chaz and Dave were a very popular duo in and around London, singing their particular brand of Cockney rock and roll. And Chaz played guitar and piano. Dave played bass and banjo. They both sang, and so they played on many of those tracks. And I think I was starting to learn more about arrangement and head arrangements, because back in the days of Wilderness days, you employed the arranger, and Richard Bowden would come in and write the dots. The Nashville scene, and later on, you'd use head arrangements, and you'd use a number system for the chord changes, and you could hear a texture on this particular song, and it might be a harmonica, or it might be a fiddle, it might be a keyboard. Let's try that texture and play it this way, and so it becomes something more instinctive. And so I was starting to learn about that, and with the songs that I produced later on, from Rattle the Cage onwards, I use that knowledge with my arrangements, because I could play lots of stuff myself.
Well, talk about live shows there when you were in England. Any memorable shows, or any venues that you especially enjoyed playing?
I played the Half Moon at Putney. They were mainly pubs. I played at Aylesbury quite a bit. The thing about London in those days, you could wander up to the Boozer on the corner and see Elvis Costello playing, or Ian Dury and the Blockheads. I mean, it was an extraordinary time. It was moving out of the Shawati Wadi bands and the Platform Shoes bands, and the beginning of punk.
Yeah,
I toured with the band as an opening act with a band called Mann, the Welsh band.
Welsh. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And drummer was Terry Williams. Is that his name? The guy from Dire Straits. He drummed in Dire Straits.
Right.
Yeah.
That's,
And so that was an experience, because we did a tour all the way up to Glasgow. We played the Glasgow Apollo, which is a giant, almost a opera house. There were a number of, it goes all the way up to the gods. There were a number of tiers of people. But this is just the precursor to the punk era. So these kids were going off, and I found that that more aggressive style of playing that I'd been developing over the hard strumming stuff and the hard delivery, not the heartfelt folky things, were the best for that. And the Australian sense of humour aligned a little bit with that sort of Glaswegian sense of humour. I enjoyed that tour very much, but I could see that in England at that time there was a bit of a shift in the audience sensibility, and then of course the Sex Pistols came in and the whole scene changed a little bit.
Yeah, it did. Well, why was that part of the reason you moved back to Australia? Because of
there were a number of reasons. Some of them were family reasons. Well, I think mainly family reasons. I liked it over there. It was great. I learned so much. The art grant, I think, really helped with my writing and my career. And I decided to return to Sydney.
Okay.
We relocated in Sydney. I started playing around the place again, and that's when I was approached by Spike Milligan to tour with him. Shortly after coming back. Yeah.
Is that the first time you guys met? Or had you met before?
I think I'd met him prior to going to England. I'd supported him at a uni gig in 1973, 74. And so he approached me. He was about to do a 6-month tour of Australia and Hong Kong and New Zealand. And so that was a great experience and another hero for me to meet.
Yeah. Well, I forgot to ask you this. When did you begin going by the name Sidney Hill? When was that?
They had to call me Sidney Hill because I was I received, was it 90? It must have been 78. I just returned. Festival, WEA Records. The guy, it's a long story. Kerry Packer had put together had destroyed the cricket world by putting together World Series cricket, and it was great. It was the right move, but the cricket establishment weren't happy. But there was an ad for World Series cricket, which was "Come on, Aussie, come on," right, and very, very popular. The record industry, in its wisdom, decided to edit that and make it into a 2.5-minute song and bring it out, and it would be a million seller. Okay. And the guy who used to be at Festival Records had moved to WEA, and he knew me and said, "We're bringing out Come On Aussie, Come On. Glenn, can you write a B-side? We need it tomorrow." And so I sat down, I wrote a song called Establishment Blues, about a guy just wanting to, kick back and watch World Series cricket, and went into a little studio in North Sydney, put it down, and the record came out shortly after that. This is in the days of vinyl singles, where you had an A side and a B side.
Right. Yep.
If the A side sold 1 million copies, so did the B side.
That's right.
But I was contracted to Festival Records as Glenn Cardier, and Glenn Cardier couldn't appear on the B side of a WEA.
Another label
record,
right?
So we became Sydney Hill, and that's the way. And they all agreed. They all agreed about it, and that was it.
Yeah, everything was kosher, and therein lies the rub. Yeah.
So there's a photograph of me somewhere getting the gold record, which is on the wall here, but with a bag over my head with my glasses on the outside. And, it was kind of a gag at the time. But I mean, Phil Spector used to do that. He used to put the song without the vocals on the other side, so he'd pick up all the royalties, And that was in the days when you did rely on your royalties for your songwriting to get by. I mean, these days that's dried up because
all the streaming and
with the streaming you don't get paid. You get paid a cent or something like that for a play.
It's just ridiculous. Don't get me started on that, or I won't get you started either. Well, what was it like supporting Cheech and Chong? Did you get to talk to socialize with either one of them?
Yeah. I met Tony at festival after they'd flown in, and so they were wild and crazy gigs and wild and crazy time, but there's that alternative scene that I needed to tap into for gigs. And as soon as you write on your resume that you appeared with Spike Milligan and Cheech and Chong, it kind of puts you on the slot. Well, that could be a good night.
Yeah.
They were funny. They were pretty good. Yeah.
I still have a couple of their albums, their comedy albums. So they came up with some hilarious material.
Well, Dave's Not Here keeps coming up in the.
That was one of their classics. One of their classics. Dave.
Everybody still quotes that, So you've arrived when that happened.
Oh, that one in the one about the three little pigs. Do you remember that one? Where they?
I don't know much of their stuff, But
well, it was the three little pigs, and the parents moved across the street to get away from them because they knew that the pigs couldn't cross the street by themselves. So that's how they got away from them. So there's some there's some good ones there. Well, when or why did you walk away from music back at that time?
I think there was a shift in the business. What was I doing? I wanted to build my own house here on the Hawkesbury River. This is a mud brick mansion.
I like that.
This is the studio I'm in at the moment, and I was teaching school because I'm a qualified school teacher, and I picked up a local job teaching, and there's a whole bunch of things. I think the scene had kind of changed. The folk scene, I think, wasn't as it used to be. There wasn't. We used to play the universities here. When universities, the kids who went to uni were, how should I say this? Less business-like and business-oriented, than the kids are today. So it was a whole different kind of cultural crowd at the universities, and so that had dried up, and I had to make ends meet. And as I said before, I'd rather sit and write a song than go on stage and play. You know, if I really wanted to chase, because I can sing and play the guitar, if I wanted to chase that, I should just learn a whole bunch of covers and play in a pub every Saturday night. But I didn't. That's not me. I don't do that. You know. So I thought, well, you know, I'm gonna set up a studio. The technology had changed at that time so that you could build a studio like this and record your stuff at home. Festival Records and those big studios weren't employing musicians anymore. A lot of them were shutting down. There was a whole shift in the industry. Yeah. And it's 25 years. That's a long time. It sounds like a long time, but it kind of went by kind of fast. I just, I was quite happy with what I was doing. I occasionally would write something for Nickelodeon or Coca-Cola, because I still had a publisher and people would ring up, and I was learning my production chops. So people would come in here and hire the studio, and we'd record stuff. And so I moved away from the bowler hatted guy had gone. And I just had moved away from that, and time just got away.
Were you having any time to write songs during that period? Did you?
Yeah, I did. If you're writing for Coke or Nickelodeon, your creative energy kind of heads that way.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you don't really feel like picking up a guitar and trying for something else. Occasionally, because I'm a writer, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be mowing the lawn or shopping. A song will come, and so I would demo that.
Okay.
But it was only until that friend of mine asked me to play at the open mic night that I started to think about playing again. And that was at the time when the festivals and blues and roots festivals were starting to emerge. We have Blues Fest here, which is a huge festival. And I felt that probably I could probably do that again. I'd since remarried, and my darling wife Caroline was unaware of all this stupid rock and roll business. And I said to her one night, Loudon Wainwright III and Richard Thompson are playing at the Enmore Theatre. I'd really like to see them. And she kind of looked like,
are you sure?
Who are they? Who are they?
Yeah.
So she kindly went along, and they were great. They were just great, and she became a fan of Loudon Wainwright there and then. She said, I think he's great, and I started to feel a little jealous, and she was she was sort of unaware of all this stuff we've been talking about, but she was unaware of I hadn't talked about. And she knew I played, and I was playing a little bit of rockabilly around the place in a band up here called All Shook Up. But that's all she knew I did. Uh-huh. And I said to her, she said, I love Loudon Wainwright. I said, I used to do that. I used to do that.
Yeah.
And she said, you didn't. I said,
she said, yeah, sure.
Sure you did. Yeah, sure, yeah. So I used to play on stage, and so I picked up a couple of gigs. A promoter friend stayed here, and he was touring Johnny Johnson, Chuck Berry's piano player, and they wanted somebody to open for him. And so I started. I said, I'll show her. I started playing, and I haven't looked back. I've really enjoyed this second phase because I can distance myself from all the garbage, and if I want to write a song that doesn't sound the least bit commercial or whatever, I'll just go ahead and write.
You can do what you want.
At this stage, I can do what I want. Yeah,
that's right. Well, let me ask you: when you started after 25 years playing again, was there any rust, or was it just like getting back on a bicycle?
It was like reacquainting myself with an old friend.
Okay.
I had adjusted my guitar playing. I noticed that a lot of the people who did play guitar at these festivals were using the alternate tunings, and there was a different attack to that instrument back in the old finger-picking folky days. And there were some wonderful, wonderful guitar players, and I became besotted by that. So I revisited my guitar technique and wrote a whole bunch of songs in open D, open G, and that changed the tonality of those songs. And I found that my lyrics suited that style of music as well. So both went together pretty well, and I started to pick up gigs again.
Yeah.
So there was the old Glen Cardier and the old Glen Cardier.
Yeah,
it kind of worked out. Yeah,
I read where the new Glen Cardier became more of like a Captain Beefheart.
Well,
times.
yeah. With if you've got something that's of a poetic nature, and you're playing to a few thousand people, it's they won't catch every word or every nuance. So it's the texture of that lyric or that poem over the structure of the song that's going to hook them in.
Yeah,
and then there's probably a chorus there that's reasonably catchy, and so the structure of that piece would change from a folk approach to a more rock approach, and that's the way I adjusted with the Sideshow,
right,
and that worked as well. So there's a few Glen Cardiers running around. There's the crazy rock and roll guy, beat poet, and Captain Beefheart voice, and there's the gentle folky who can sit down with a guitar and do 2 hours at a folk festival.
Yeah. Multifaceted Glen Cardier,
I guess.
Well, you did release the album Rattle the Cage, and that was pretty well received right out of the gate.
Yeah, I guess it surprised people because it was at that time, and some people still remember who I was.
Yeah.
So I guess that.
Yeah. Have you noticed playing live more recently, some of the old fans and maybe some of their kids and grandkids now that they're bringing to the shows?
Yeah, that exact thing happened to me because there was a young fellow who came up and said, I love your music. I've grown up with it. And I said, how old are you? And he said, I'm 18 or something. He said, my grandmother used to play your records.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice now, when you get people coming up and with Facebook and that kind of thing, where they quote lyrics back, and and they say to me, you know, this had a profound effect on me when I was younger, you know, and I guess that validates you as a writer, you know. It's you and I keep coming back to the writer part. I mean, you can wear all these clothes and jump around on stage and do all that sort of stuff, but it doesn't happen unless you actually write the thing in the first place, and that always fascinates me.
Right, right. And you'll get those responses. I'm always excited doing these after it's posted to read the comments, and you'll get some of those, you know, talking about how much it meant to you, and remember that show back in '76, you know, and those kind of things, yeah, from the past. But it's time, you know, it's the quality music will travel. So, and it does, you know, from generation to generation. It's going to travel, you know, it does. And I'm finding that doing these too. Well, the Sideshow, I talk a little bit about that. 2009. Who's in that? Who's in that band?
Yeah. Okay. Well, Dave O'Fester on the drums. We haven't played for a long time, but we created magic when we did play. We occasionally catch up for a meal and threaten to hit the stage again. Dave O'Fester on the drums, Mick Maloof on bass and stand-up bass, because I'm just a big fan of rockabilly. I just love the stand-up bass sound. You know,
I like it.
We've had two guitarists, Rex Go, who is one of the top session guitarists in Australia, Jeremy Edwards, a lovely rootsy slide player, and Phil Grove on keyboard. And I think probably the difficulty with doing gigs at the Sideshow, we're not a jam band, you know. Like if you play the blues or country music or music that's of a certain style, you could solo over the top of something because you know the structure of it. With my songs, there might be verse, chorus, middle eight, tricky instrumental part, you know, and another section to it with harmonies and strange chords and odd time signatures that I tend to write. And it's to mount a tour with the Sideshow again would require a couple of months rehearsal. Just people just to try and remember these stupid Cardier songs, that all the quirky stuff that he goes on with, you know. So that's one of the things in its way, but that's also part of its magic. So
right.
Watch this space. You never know.
Yeah,
the band might get back together again.
Yeah, well, you must have been pretty proud of Stranger Than Fiction when it was shortlisted for the Cooper's Australian Music Prize.
Yeah. Stranger Than Fiction, that's a lovely record. We recorded that at Albert's, which is I think we used the Easy Beats old drum kit for.
Oh, is that right? Really?
Yeah, because the Easies used to record at Albert's and AC/DC, of course.
Yeah. Who just passed away? One. I think the last member just passed away.
Yeah, Dick Diamond, the bass player.
Yeah.
I can't remember his real name, but he just passed away.
Yep.
So it's been an interesting journey, and we'll just, at the moment I'm still pursuing the solo shows, and I'm starting to talk a lot in between songs about that era, and growing up with folk music and rock and roll, and the audience at the moment seem to appreciate that, but I'm very aware that audience is kind of moving on, and there's a whole new one coming in, and a good song is a good song. So I know that there's a different style of music at the moment, and people are frustrated with how songs are very formulaic. But I still think that if you write a good hook and a good earworm, people are going to appreciate that, whatever age they are.
Yeah, because it's music is within all of us, you know, and it's like you said. I mean, you just have to tap into it. But yeah, that's good to hear that those kind of stories. And once you're bitten by the bug, I hear this so many times. You know, you always return to it. You know, even if it's 25 years, you step away. Look what happened. You went back to it. You know, it's hard to not write music, perform. You know, when music is within you, you know, and it's got to come out. It's got to come out.
It's got to. I mean, the only issue with the fact that I talk about, you know, there's that rock and roll side, and then there's the folk side, is that some people are, if I'm doing a folk gig, some people are fans of the wild and crazy stuff.
Yeah,
they come along expecting to hear that.
right.
I know that in 2016, I won the international song competition, a section of it, with a song called "A Case of Mistaken Identity," which I recorded here. And it's a kind of a detective rock, funky kind of song with lots of instrumentation and some wild guitar played by Rex Go and harmonica by Christian Marsh. And I've had to adapt that to one guitar. And you know, so that was tricky. But if the lyrics are strong, you can arrange something like that, where it's kind of like a beat poem over an open tune guitar riff. It can create its own magic. So these songs can be presented in many different ways.
Right.
And so it's not, you know, it's not an issue.
No, you hit on a good point too about the art of a playlist, playing live, interjecting, you know, having enough old familiar material, but interjecting new material into it, you know, and keeping people, you know, into the music, you know. And yes,
you hear lots of criticism sometimes when an act comes through town and they just play their new stuff. I think, you know, you should introduce the new stuff to people, but everybody's there for a certain for the other reason, you know, the reason why they came in the first place.
That's right, and being aware of that. That's what it's all about. All right. Well, I do appreciate it very much, Glenn. It's been very enjoyable. Thank you for, you know,
I've enjoyed it too. I've enjoyed it.
You're very easy to talk to. I'm sure you've been told that before, but very, very casual, very laid back, and I'm laid back myself. So it makes it for a very enjoyable, relaxing conversation. So,
I've enjoyed it greatly. I mean, later on, I'm very keen to find out more about you, Greg. And
okay.
So I'll send you an email and we'll chat.
I like to stay in touch. You know, I try to stay in touch with as many people, you know, musicians as I can, and you know, keep me up to date on what's going on with you, not just music wise, but you know, in your life as well. I enjoy that, you know, because it's all together. it's what makes us human, right? So
it does, and thank you very much for the invitation. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I will send you a copy of this. It usually takes about a week or so. You know, I'll do it on a weekend, and the following weekend I do the editing, and then post it and see what kind of mileage and see what kind of comments, and those are always fun to read. And
All right.
but appreciate it once again, Glenn, and all the best to you. All right, and
Cheers, mate.
you take care.
Okay, and bye, everybody.